Hello, welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket, looking back at the second day's play from Wellington and also from Adelaide as well, with me, Simon Hughes.
And me, Simon Mann.
Inexorable progress by England in Wellington to take a massive lead, and actually it looks like the same thing's happening in Adelaide as well. We're recording this before the end of the second day's play in Adelaide, but Australia already 150 ahead thanks to a brilliant 100 by Travis Head. And England just piling on the pressure on New Zealand, Simon.
Yeah, well, they say that the third day is moving day, but I think the second day, I think it's fair to say, was moving day today. England did a lot of damage yesterday, of course, on the first day. They were in a really strong position. And you thought, well, what's going to happen today? Are New Zealand going to come out and eat into England's overnight lead? No way. England just came out and rolled them over. And Gus Atkinson, a hat-trick to finish off the innings. Did you ever take a hat-trick, Goz, in any form of cricket, first-class cricket,
Yeah,
or
I did.
one-day cricket, or anything like that?
I did actually. I did take a hat trick, not in first class cricket. I did take a hat trick, a bizarre incident actually. My first game for a club side in Durban in South Africa, and I arrived, flew overnight, was picked up in the morning by the chairman of the club. I was playing with Mark Nicholas actually for a club in Durban. Was picked up, taken out for lunch, went to a party in the evening, barely got to bed
There's
at
a
all,
surprise.
and took a hat trick the next day in my first match. So, that's a one and only time. And we teach you some things occasionally that you didn't know on this podcast. Do you know the origin of the term hat trick? Maybe we've talked about this before on episode 423 of this endless series. Do you know how a hat trick idea was formed?
I reckon it's, well, look, I'm going to have a stab at it from memory and from the deep recesses of my brain. I think it's something to do with if you took wickets, you passed a hat around and people put money in it, something like that, back in the 18th century or something like that.
I like the way you're thinking. It's not the way, actually. In fact, what happened was there was a famous cricketer in well, you're right around the timing. It was about the 1760s, actually, playing for Hambledon, called David Harris, who was the sort of origin, really, of Shane Warne, because he was a leg spin bowler, but he bowled underarm. And he was a master of landing the ball on molehills, because they could pitch the pitch wherever they wanted. When it was a home game, they could choose the strip of land they wanted to play the match on, and he always liked to bowl his underarms on bits of land with molehills on, and he could pitch the ball and make it spin. And on one particular day, he took 3 wickets in 3 balls, and he was presented at the end of the match with a gold-laced hat in about 1770. And from then on, it became a tradition. If you did the same feat, 3 wickets in 3 balls, you got presented with a hat, and that's the origin of the term.
Oh, excellent. Well, it's good to learn something, isn't it, on a Saturday? I Talking about hats, my hat tipped to Ali Martin, who is the cricket correspondent of The Guardian and a former sub on the Sun, so sub-editor on The Sun, and he immediately, after Gus Atkinson had taken his hat-trick, just tweeted, Gus Hattrickson. And that's a very Sun sub-editor's way of thinking. Anyway, well done to him. Fantastic for Gus Atkinson. Brilliant for England. Carse actually got it going. And actually, in a way, the test match was probably done and dusted in that first session today. Okay, England did a lot of groundwork yesterday. What I'm saying is that they just confirmed the strength of their position and set the match on its inexorable course. I think in that first session they wiped out New Zealand's first innings, 5 for 39, and then by lunch, what have they done? 82 for 1. And you thought, well, the rest of the day is just England are just going to do what they want to do, and that's pretty much how it played out. So a lead of 533. There was some chat on the TV commentary about a declaration. I didn't think that would have made any sense whatsoever. Surely just get a team in that situation with 3 days less, unless there's some weather around or the forecast is not particularly good, and I don't think that's the case. Just grind them down, just absolutely annihilate them, leave them with bad memories forever. 650, 700, something like that. I mean, they could be. I mean, the way England are playing or do play, there. I mean, they could be 700 ahead by lunchtime, couldn't they, or close on? And then perhaps then, if you've still got some wickets left, you might think about a declaration. But why would you declare on the second evening with such a massive
Well,
lead?
I mean, I suppose the only reason you might is if the weather forecast wasn't great for, say, the fifth
Yeah,
day,
exactly.
and you want to get bowling
Yeah.
again. But sure, I know, I take your point. I mean, sometimes you like to get the opposition in after they've been toiling all day in the field. You like to get them in for half an hour before the end of play. But England hadn't been batting all day.
Get
had
them
they?
in for
So,
half an hour before lunch tomorrow, Yoz, when they're
yeah, yeah.
700 behind. That's what I'd
No,
say.
no, that's right. So, I mean, Atkinson hat trick completing, well, not quite completing because there's still one test to go, but completing a remarkable few months for him in his first outing as a Test cricketer. 12 on Test debut at Lord's, 100 as well in a subsequent match at Lord's, and now this, a hat trick, first England hat trick for 7 years since Moeen Ali. Do you remember finishing off South Africa
Yeah,
with 3 wickets
at the Oval.
in 3 balls at the Oval? Yeah, and I think 2 of them were reviewed actually, and one of them, of course, this hat-trick ball was reviewed. It was the leg before to Tim Southey. I thought the ball before that, actually, the middle wicket, was a good bit of bowling. He got a little bit lucky with his first wicket, with Nathan Smith dragging on, and then a good first ball to Matt Henry, which was right in the neck area, sort of jagging back at him and rising sharply, and all he could do was fend it away to sort of third slip. So that was a good bit of bowling, good kind of attacking kind of shock ball. And then the final wicket, which was a lovely bit of cricket really, because Stokes put all the fielders back to give Tim Southey the idea that he was going to bowl a short ball. Southey likes to have a go at the short ball, and so he put a few men back on the leg side boundary, and then Atkinson pitched it up, and that was a good bit of a strategy. Southey was all over the place, rammed in front. He reviewed it, but I think the players were all walking off before they'd even made the decision, hadn't they? They all knew it was absolutely plumb. Phillips, the non-striker, marched straight off. He didn't even bother to wait for the review, and of course it was absolutely dead LBW. So well done to Atkinson, completing a remarkable sort of 3-pronged achievement with 12 on debut, 100 at Lord's, and then this. So absolutely fantastic. I think it's the 15th
You
hat trick by an England bowler.
you bowlers are canny devils, aren't you? Fancy that, putting the field back and then pitching one up to Tim Southey, and you're right. I mean, it was so plumb. I think Southey only reviewed it. Well, he did only review it because they had reviews left, and so they might as well. I think he knew as well. Everyone knew, but it is a bit weird, isn't it, seeing the players just about to walk off the field as it's being confirmed. I think there was a game early in the days of DRS. I was at a one-day game at Chester Street, where I think the players were off the field, and so the umpire was just standing out there, or the 2 umpires were standing out there on their own, and there was no players in sight. The players had all disappeared, both the batters and the fielders, and the umpire was just standing in the middle, just raising his finger to confirm the decision. I mean, I suppose you should wait, but I think everyone knew. And I think Atkinson, actually, it was one of those celeb appeals, wasn't it, that Stuart Broad was famous for, where basically he knew it was out and was already celebrating before the umpire had raised his finger. Well, one of those achievements from Atkinson that just topped off a fine morning from England. I mean, it's Brydon Carse who got it going. First quarter of an hour, you thought, perhaps New Zealand can eat into England's advantage here. 1 or 2 shots played, but once they got it going, Blundell bowled by Carse, an absolute ripping delivery. It was sometimes we've talked about this a little bit. We talked about the way Travis Head was dismissed in the first test, and I said I thought it was a really superb ball, and you said, well, I think his technique was a bit iffy, but I mean, Blundell, he got one from Carse that it wasn't that full, and it just nipped away and hit the top of off stump. And it's not easy to play, especially if you're a middle order player and it's just relatively near the start of the day's play. But absolute beauty from Blundell, and then O'Rourke, LBW, and England were on their way. 96 for 7, bit of a partnership between involving Smith and Phillips, but that wicket that played on just sealed it for England really, and then Atkinson finished it off. And there was Phillips in at number 7, who was left high and dry at the non-striker's end. I wonder actually whether they quite got the, perhaps I don't know, just one thing that struck me, whether they got the order right, whether they should have Phillips at 6 and Blundell at 7 New Zealand. Just a thought I had in my mind anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, 34 overs is all that New Zealand innings lasted, actually, which is a pretty poor show by them. And Carse, yes, a fantastic delivery to get rid of Blundell. What makes him quite hard to play, actually, Carse, I think, is that he's got a slightly open-chested action. And it looks like the ball is angling in, and I think that's probably his natural delivery. But he manages to get the odd ball to what we say hold up, which means sort of move away a bit from the right-hander when it's sort of angling in. And that was a classic example, the batter stuck on the crease to a fullish ball that sort of thought it was angling in, and it just held its line and took the top of off stump. And he seems to have this ability, Carse, even though he's tall, to be able to bowl that length which hits the stumps, which someone like Pat Cummins, it's the same kind of bowling, I think, that Pat Cummins produces as well. That insistent pace at sort of around 86 miles an hour with that nice length which just aims at the top of the off stump with a good short ball to back it up, and just a bit of movement either way. It's a really powerful weapon, actually, to have a bowler like that who looks very consistent in his general makeup and approach and kind of rhythm. He's been an absolute fantastic discovery in the last couple of months, and as you say, opened the door for Atkinson.
Yeah, I mean the thing about Brydon Carse is, I mean, it was clear. I mean, it's not as though he's just come into international cricket. He's been there for a while now. He's been there for a few years, and it's been clear that when England have had the chance to pick him, in white ball cricket, so they've picked him, haven't they? And so it was clear to me a while back that they rated him and they liked what they saw in him. And after a difficult summer in which he was banned for historical betting, finally they got him in the side, and he's shown what he can do at Test level, as opposed to county cricket, where we all know his record is not that good, but he's got attributes, and we've talked about it before, that all-round package, pace, and he can bat and he can field, and I mean, it's a real bonus that England have got him in, and that he's produced some good figures with the Ashes a year away, and India coming next summer as well, and also in this series as well. The England needed a win, didn't they, after what happened in Pakistan? You feel it was just I don't know, one of those series that it got away from them a little bit, and you feel they should have done better. They probably should have won the series there, but there we go, they didn't, and so they needed this victory, and it looks as if they're going to win the series. I'd be a huge surprise if they don't from here. There'll be something special happens, or some weather gets involved to deny England in this game. So New Zealand bundled out. What about New Zealand, Yoz, in general? They came away from India having won 3-0. One of the great Test series victories, really, of all time. No one would have had New Zealand winning 3-0 in India. It might nick a Test match, but to go there and win 3-0 in Indian conditions against a team that hadn't lost a home since the 14th century, that's quite something, isn't it, to do that? So what about New Zealand?
Well, I mean, their batting just looks ropey, doesn't it? And they've got Tim Southey, who is definitely in a worse category than Anderson was a year ago. Everyone was saying, well, should Jimmy Anderson retire? And actually, he still managed to produce decent performances. Southey is just way past his sell-by date, and so they're bowling with an opening bowler who is innocuous, and they're opening the batting at the moment with two guys who look out of form, and it's always about opening pairs. Opening pairs are so important. Obviously, England have got their own issue with Crawley at the moment. We'll come to that, but I think that their opening pair with the ball looks a little bit. Well, Henry's bowling well, but Southey just looks as if he's finished, and their opening pair with the bat just are not delivering, therefore exposing the middle order. And it's I suppose cricket is like any sport. There is a momentum shift, and suddenly things all fall apart when they look fantastic. I mean, whether perhaps the wickets in India helped New Zealand because they were so spin friendly that even a fairly average spinner who doesn't even get picked in New Zealand is taking wickets. Axar Patel, who took all those wickets in.
Well, and Santner as well. And Santner,
who took all those wickets in India, and they don't even get picked in New Zealand, which is strange. I mean, I think Santner's a brilliant cricketer. and I would pick him in. Like England go with Bashir, I would pick Santner in any conditions, because I think he takes wickets, he can influence the game in lots of ways. But I'm not saying that would solve their current issue, but the balance of the team doesn't feel quite right. And I would be opening the bowling with Will O'Rourke, actually. I mean, Southey's got to go, and Will O'Rourke should be taking the new ball for me with Matt Henry.
Yeah, well, Southey will go. He's got one more Test match which he's available for.
Yeah, but I wouldn't give him that. I wouldn't give him that. Test match.
The only problem, Yoz, is he's a legend in New Zealand, and he's playing on his home ground, or would be playing on his home ground in Hamilton. But I mean, he picked up a couple of wickets today, but there was no real threat, and one of them was. We'll come to it in a second. Jason Bethell. It was, I think that later in his career he won't play a shot like that when he's on 96. It was just a bit of a loose drive. But let's go back to the end of New Zealand's innings. So they were bundled. Like England had a lead 155. You thought, goodness me. I mean, that is beyond their wildest dreams, really. When they were 40 for 4, even when they were bowled out with 280. Actually, if you said to them you're going to get a lead of 155, I'm surprised if anyone was optimistic enough to think it would be that size. So England went into bat, and I think in that session before lunch, it was confirmed that England were going to go on and win the match. Really, I don't care, it's easy in hindsight, but you think, well, what's New Zealand's way here? Okay, they need to reduce England to 40 for 4 again, didn't they? But they were 82 for 1 at lunch, so the lead was 237. Duckett got in, Bethell got in. The point is there were still things happening, and actually they were still happening throughout the day, and that's the real concern for New Zealand. This pitch hasn't totally flattened out. I think what you've seen today is that psychological scoreboard pressure having its effect, where England could play in the way they like to play, but New Zealand was still causing them problems at times. I mean, they were all. You could actually put a highlights reel together of about 15 incidents where you thought, goodness me, this pitch is still playing tricks. 15, 20 incidents, ball going past the outside edge, whatever. There was one that took the shoulder of Duckett's bat and he got away with it, and things like that were happening. So there's still enough in this pitch, if it plays on the third and stroke fourth day like it played today, for England to be extremely confident. I mean, they got 533 runs in the bank, but I mean, the way to go is just keep on batting and then just really turn the screw, isn't it? But okay, so England lunch in a dominant position. What about Zach Crawley though? I mean, that's the one really disappointing thing, and actually crunched Southey for 2 fours. I mean, they were fantastic strokes. And then Henry, first ball, would you know it? And he's not scored a run against Henry in this series. He bowled him a leg stump half volley, and wouldn't you know it, he clipped it straight to mid wicket. I mean, you bowlers have it easy, Oz.
Yeah, no, sometimes you just have the wood over someone, don't you? And that's certainly the case with Matt Henry. I think he's taken his wicket 4 times and not conceded a run, as you say. And the fours off Southey in the previous over were kind of like throwdowns, really, like lovely little balls, loopy sort of, not half volleys quite, but lovely kind of width that Crawley latched onto and drove through the offside, beautiful shots. So you've seen the best and worst of Crawley in the space of 7 balls. 2 immaculate off drives, and then a fairly casual, lazy clip through the leg side straight to mid wicket, caught on your bike. See you later. I think he can't buy a run at the moment, can he? And it's sometimes cricket goes like that. He sort of shrugged his shoulders, shook his head, and walked off. Poor man. He must sort of be saying to Harry Brook, "Can you please give me a little bit of your luck?" But at the moment, it's not working out for him. So poor old Zach gone again in less than double figures. We'll get to the rest of the England innings after this break. But just to pause for a second to remind you about our premium site, the Analyst Plus, where at the moment we have the first episode of Headhunters, the series looking back at that amazing 74-5 Ashes series with Lillian Thompson, which is 50 years ago this month. Go to patreon.com/theanalyst25. It's our premium site with extra content, including ad-free versions of this podcast and regular series. The second episode of that Headhunter series will be out next week. patreon.com/theanalyst25.
So England in control despite the loss of Zach Crawley before lunch, and then we move on to Jacob Bethell, who was the other star of the day, or one of the stars of the day for England, certainly one of the headline acts. We had that hat-trick from Gus Atkinson, and then 96 from Jacob Bethell, the man who shouldn't be batting at number 3. Some say that. Some was saying that. But I mean, in a way, it's quite a nice situation to come in at, isn't it? You know, when you've got all those runs in the bank, it's a decent batting day, despite the fact there is still something in the pitch. And he rode his luck at times. He played some stunning shots. One thing I was thinking about, actually, Yoz, after Crawley had gone and Bethell was just beginning to establish himself. This is the player who has had a relatively rapid rise in the last few months. To get in the Test side, okay, unusual circumstances with a couple of injuries, but if they think this player is, say, destined to play 80, 100 Test matches, you can never totally predict a smooth course. Do they now, once they've now picked him, do they want to leave him out? So the thought that occurred to me is they batted him at number 3. Do you know where I'm going with this? They batted him at number 3. If they really, really like him, and, I'm thinking short mid-term now, do they say, well, look, Zach Crawley just looks too sketchy. Actually, Jacob Bethell is a much better bet at the top of the order. I know this sounds preposterous, and my hunch is to answer my own question by saying no, probably not, almost certainly not yet. But is it a possibility, do you think? Bethell instead of Crawley at the top of the order?
Of course, it absolutely is. I mean, it's going to be then 2 left-handers with Duckett, and I like the combination of Crawley and Duckett at the moment, with the tall guy, right-hander, likes to hit it through the offside off the front foot, and also decent off the back foot, and then Duckett with his busyness and back foot skills, left-handed. So it's a lovely combination, difficult to bowl at. 2 left-handers obviously makes it a bit easier if it was Bethell and Duckett. I mean, there's such a long time between now and when England play another Test match, which is in the summertime. So anything
after Hamilton,
after this 3rd Test. So
yeah.
I can't see England leaving Crawley out for the 3rd Test and putting Bethell at opener. I think they'll just stick with the same side. And then, obviously, they've got 6 months in which to kind of make a decision, and maybe Crawley will come back into form. I mean, Bethell has... I totally underestimated him. I accept that. I saw some flair in the one-day series, undoubtedly, which England had also spied. I didn't see the technique or the aptitude to be able to play Test-class bowling with a red ball. But clearly the selectors have seen that ability as well. I mean, what seems odd is that Warwickshire haven't given Bethell more opportunity, really, and he's never batted at number 3 or in the top 3. It seems strange that, but this seems to happen too often in county cricket. Bashir not getting much cricket with Somerset, and a number of other players that haven't. Credit to Surrey actually for giving the likes of Jamie Smith and Gus Atkinson and so on, the chance to play. In Jamie Smith's case, getting in quite high up the order, fairly early in his career. Ollie Pope, another one. Getting them a lot of opportunity early on, not at number 6. The trouble is that there is this sort of regime. There's a hierarchy in county cricket, and when you've got older players in situ, it's difficult to disrupt that arrangement and bring in some young players. And I remember when I first arrived, the reason why my book, the one that won the award, A Lot of Hard Yakka, was called that, was because I walked into the dressing room on my first game and put my jacket on a hook in the dressing room at Lord's, and an older senior player said, "You can't put your jacket up there, you'll need a lot of hard yakka before you get the chance to put your jacket on there. Piss off down the corridor." And there's this sort of there is a hierarchy in county cricket still existing. I mean, that was a long time ago, but even now there are players who've had careers of 5-10 years who are expecting to bat or bowl in a particular position, and that's their sort of routine. And to have a young upstart coming in at 21-year-old upstart pushing them out, it doesn't happen. So England have kind of almost fast forward some of these players beyond that kind of restriction, and Bethell clearly the latest example. And I think he's just got a lovely method. He's very easy to watch. He's got a lovely gliding sort of smoothness at the crease. He picks up the length very early, so that pull shot he hit off Nathan Smith for 6 over mid-wicket. Amazing. When he'd only barely got into double figures and the ball goes sailing over deep mid-wicket, miles into the crowd, not all that short, and in front of square, not a top edge, and he did it again, and then a lovely silky, sumptuous on drive from a ball which wasn't a half volley, put back past the bowler. I mean, he's got some lovely shots and a defence and a great composure at the crease. So he's got all the ingredients. I mean, somebody in our World's Best Cricket Club said, "Is he the new David Gower?" I mean, it's high praise, but there are lots of elements of his game which are redolent of Gower.
Yeah, it's actually It's actually a thought that crossed my mind actually, but I think it was kind of the blonde hair thing, the blonde hair, left-handed thing. I think that was the thing that immediately struck me. I mean, he doesn't look particularly Gower-like in the way he plays. He looks, actually, you called it the other day. He looks a little bit more Strauss-like, doesn't he? Not quite Andrew Strauss, but some of the mannerisms, some of the strokes are more reminiscent of Andrew Strauss. Just one thing about where he's batting in the order and batting at Warwickshire. I suppose what happens is, with a young player, you want to give them an opportunity, don't you? So you probably try to fit them in the middle order. I mean, England have done that in the past, haven't they? And it's only unusual circumstances really that have seen Bethell slot in at number 3 in this Test series. I mean, you can say fair play to England. They saw enough in him to think yes, he could do the job at number 3, but I don't think he was particularly earmarked for that. It was just an unusual set of circumstances which allowed that or saw that happening. But England grasped it, didn't they? And say, right, we're not going to mess around. We're not going to put Brook up there or Root up there, whatever. We're just going to take one out and put one in. If you sort of mean with Pope dropping down because he couldn't really bat at number 3 if he's keeping wicket. So yeah, it's a tricky one. I do get your point about sort of people like their positions, and you think of cricket, well, all sport really is competing against the opposition, but you're also competing against your own teammates as well, aren't you? You want to, if you're established, you want to stay established, and if you're a young upstart, you want to knock those out who are more established. You've got to have that competition within your own team.
This is the story that comes from Tom Brown, who founded SACA, the South Asian Cricket Academy, which is doing such good work in English cricket at the moment and has produced now 10 first-class cricketers. He's managed to find young Asians who were missing out on county opportunities for various reasons, have not been on the pathways or whatever, and have now had a chance to play county cricket and have shown that they're worth signing. And he said that what often happens, he finds, is that young players on county books who with talent don't get a chance if they're a batter because there's players resident in those positions. So he's had lots of young Asian players come to him and say, I can't get in at Essex or Somerset or Northants or whatever, because there's a set sort of top 5 in both first team and second team. And I just can't get the chance. And he's managed to find an opportunity for them somewhere else. But he said there's no shortage of demand for bowlers. Everybody wants seam bowlers. Every county's on the phone to him saying, have you got any seamers? Because we need a couple because we've got injuries. But batters tend to be much harder for a young player to get in if they're not already in.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, Gajah Valley at Worcestershire got in at number 3 this season, didn't they? I mean, he sort of bucked that trend, but and had a kind of quite difficult end to the season, but made some runs at the start of the season. So, yeah, it's getting that balance in any team, I suppose, is quite tricky, isn't it? Do you totally expose them high up the order, or do you try to bed them in the middle order? And I mean, England have pushed Ollie Pope up the order, and he's got runs at the top of the order, but he's also looked vulnerable, and he actually looks a bit more secure in the middle order. Anyway, Jacob Bethell today, he made 96. He played some stunning strokes. He had some good fortune as well, as you probably do need on this surface. On 90, he tried to savage Southey, and he miscued out to deep mid-wicket. As I was watching, I thought, just take your 100, just knock the next 10 runs around. But he got to 96. He tried to drive one through the offside, just a bit loose. It wasn't quite, the ball wasn't quite there for the stroke, and he nicked it through, and so he missed out on a first Test 100. What a fantastic opportunity. And Ben Duckett was with him. Duckett got one from Southey, just sort of angling in a bit, and it was kind of a bit of a nothing shot, really, a bit of a poke at it, and he got inside edge onto his stump. So neither player today built England's really strong position going on to 100, but ultimately a very satisfactory day for England. And of course, as well, just some runs for Joe Root today after after that big score in the first Test in Multan. It's been quite a lean time for him by his own high standards, but back in the runs today, and the chance tomorrow of another 100. He's 73 not out overnight, but even he at times had to work. I mean, New Zealand had the field back. I mean, there were some quite cheap runs on offer, but the ball every now and again was doing enough to cause problems for even Joe Root, even with England in such a strong position. So a huge amount of encouragement for England's bowlers tomorrow and in the rest of the game. It's a thankless task, really, for New Zealand from here. I mean, if they get out of this, I mean, it'd be one of the biggest miracle in the history of Test cricket. I think we're in that sort of situation now. England is so dominant in the game, and there's enough in the pitch, and there are 3 days left. Good luck with that, basically.
Do you remember that famous match when Athers was captain of England, and they couldn't bowl New Zealand out on the last day, and Danny Morrison, who was one of the walking number 11s, managed to survive about 2 hours and not out in about 80 balls or something. And there was a great headline in The Sun the next morning which said, "Ewell never get them out," with the Ewell spelt EWELL, never get them out, as a little reference to sheep, obviously, in New Zealand. I just one little line on. I suppose my thinking there is hopefully that headline doesn't occur again. Just a thought on Bethell as well. I mean, I love his manner of playing. It starts with a beautiful high backlift, very quite Lara-like actually. His bat swing is really like the modern player, I suppose, brought up in T20. There's a really full backlift right up, so the bat is almost perpendicular above him, like a periscope, and then a lovely flow through the ball. I mean, he's not a bludgeoner of the ball, is he? He's much more of a stroker of the ball. I mean, he is a beautiful player to watch, actually. Duckett, 1,000 Test runs this year, but only 200, so he'll be ruining that. And also, just in the course of he's been very consistent, but he has wanted to get one or two bigger scores than he actually has in the end. And England in this innings, when Root and Brooke were together, just a one for the statos, they scored England's 500,000th Test run. So England now have 500,000 Test runs under their belts since 1877. Slight bit of trivia for you there.
How many of those have you watched, Yoz, do you reckon?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, it's probably been, obviously because of the more Test matches that are played now.
Yeah.
I reckon probably 100,000 anyway.
Yeah, probably even more than that, I don't know. Yeah, anyway, we digress. Harry Brook today out there smacking it around again. He had a bit of luck. He was scything and hacking and hitting the ball sweetly at times. Caught at long off, straight long off, looking to go take Phillips down the ground for 6. So not 100 today for Brook, but a half century. Pope caught at slip for 10, and then Ben Stokes coming in just before the close, which we mentioned. His first ball for 4, his third ball for 6, he had another 6 as well. And that was what I think was leading some people to think, England going for a declaration before the close. But absolutely no need, really. New Zealand on their knees, but they'll be on their knees tomorrow. In fact, I don't know, in fact, they might be sort of lying flat on the ground tomorrow. So just keep them out there, keep scoring, and then do that ruthless thing, really, that you don't let a team off. Not that with 530 runs in the bank you're letting a team off, but I didn't see the point of pulling out. So there's every chance, I suppose, that the third day might well be the last, with New Zealand under extreme pressure. And New Zealand these 2 days have really felt the force of the way England play, and England let New Zealand off the hook in Wellington last time, but it's not going to happen this time, Yoz.
No, that's right. I'm sure it's not. Well, unless there's a strange storm. We've got a storm in England, haven't we now? Unless there's a sudden storm that comes up across the Tasman and blights the area of Wellington for a couple of days, New Zealand are dead and buried. And so I think probably are India in Australia. Australia finishing with about 337 all out, so a lead of
Yeah,
150.
337 all out. Yeah.
Bumrah 4 wickets, but I noticed he got cramp during his spell with the second new ball. And that'll be a worry for India going forward. It's been a very hot day in Adelaide. Great crowds as well. 50,000 have been at the Adelaide Oval for those 2 days of that Test match. So fantastic support for the game. And India have a fight on their hands, as do New Zealand. We'll be back tomorrow to review the third day's play. And in the meantime, don't forget our premium site, the Analyst, patreon.com/the Analyst 25. See you tomorrow.